Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy, Golden Falls, Golden What If, whatever you want to call me, and I'm back with part 2 of What If Deku Was Spider Man. And for those who celebrated, happy Thanksgiving. I hope everyone had a good time with their family, even if you don't celebrate Thanksgiving, and I hope y'all have some things to be thankful for, because I definitely do. I'm definitely thankful for y'all and all the people that have helped me in growing this YouTube channel and whatever I'm going to do in the near future. But with that said, that's a little my soppy, being nice and all that stuff and being appreciative stuff. Now that's out of the way. I want to say this is part 2. Not sure how long this series will go, but I do have some other series that I have in mind that will definitely be coming up. I'll be trying to post more consistent. Hopefully I can eventually get myself back into the daily grind, which recently I haven't been able to really get my mindset back to that, but hey, I'm getting there. I'm slowly but surely trying to get back there. But with that said, I'm not going to waste any more of your time, and we are going to get into part 2 of What If Deku Was Spider Man. Let's get it. Izuku Midoriya has made it. Sort of. He's made it to Class 1A, he's made it to UA, and he is ready for the journey that is ahead. In all transparency, most people know, or at least assume, that he is the one and only Spider-Man. Of course, he has a different version of the suit, which many are a bit confused about, but at the same time, the assumptions and people just knowing he is Spider-Man is something that's pretty obvious. Izuku's never been a person that can hide things extremely well, and this would be just the same. His powers, and he might try to hide that it's this or that, or that he didn't do this or didn't do that, but what we've seen with All Might in conversations with him in canon, he can't really keep secrets to himself, at least not very well. And that's obviously the same thing that happens here. Izuku would then have his first challenge, and that is the quirk assessment test. I use the word challenge a little bit loosely. Of course, there is going to be some harder things for Izuku to do, but at the end of the day, some of the, more brute strength things are going to be relatively easy. Throwing a ball, grip strength, stuff like that would be a breeze for Izuku. And even with the threat of being expelled, Izuku gave it his complete and utter all, and would be number 1. It wouldn't necessarily be close. Izuku's raw power alone would put him above most people. Maybe his speed lacked in terms of verticality, in terms of him just going straight up from 0 to as fast as he can. But you can even argue that he would be much faster than everybody else, and if he's able to use gadgets like his web shooters, it would be extremely easy for him to grapple onto a building, swing across at pretty darn fast speeds, and it would be pretty basic. There are some versions of Spider-Man that straight up are extremely fast, like blazing fast, but obviously I'm not going to use those versions of him. But with that said, let's just continue on. The person that did get last would be, Invisible Girl. But it would be revealed that nobody's actually getting expelled. But that would be revealed the next day when the expulsion is reversed. Aizawa has a funny thing that he likes to do in terms of expelling a class or a classmate to draw in a point. And then after he's done expelling them and showing that, they will get better, or they will be at the top of their game when they come back, then they're in a good place. Izuku thinks this is an interesting way of going about it. I mean, he can kind of tell that Aizawa had some sort of a plan, but it was kind of weird. But with that said, the fun stuff is about to begin, and that is hero training. The door would swing open that next day, and the one and only All Might would arrive. All Might would say, "I am here," in his loud, boisterous voice, and he would tell everybody that they will be doing hero training. Hero training would, start with them getting suited up, Izuku suiting up in his black Spider-Man outfit, something that everyone looks on in complete awe, and All Might even smirks a little bit, thinking that this guy right here, or this young teen, is gonna be one hell of a hero. Maybe even wishes that he could have gave Izuku these powers. He's seen what the Spider-Man did out on the streets. Imagine what he could have done with One for All. Well, that's something he can't really think about now because it already occurred and he's already given it away to someone else. But still, Izuku decides to listen up to All Might and listen to all the words he says. This is one of his role models, and he listens close to the certain instructions that All Might gives, explaining certain hero training, explaining what they're going to be doing, which is being heroes versus villains, and the importance of these scenarios. These scenarios lean toward the villains. All of the, well, advantages will be on the villain's side. Time is on their side. In terms of capture, will be on their side. If certain things occur, the villains automatically just win. Yes, all they have to do is touch the bomb, but it's a little more complicated than that for the heroes. If they're not careful, the bomb could theoretically explode because of certain circumstances. The villains win no matter what, in life or death, and that's what they need to realize relatively quickly. First up will be Izuku and Ochako Uraka as the heroes, and Bakugo and Tenya Ida as the villains. Izuku and Ochako get set up and get ready to go, making some sort of a plan. Of course, Izuku comes up with the idea of just avoiding a fight. They can climb the building, scale it with his webs and his climbing capabilities, and she can just hop on his back. Of course, she thinks that she's going to be too heavy or be kind of a struggle for him, but he says that would be just fine. He's picked up far, far, far heavier things than just people. He's picked up multiple people before, so it shouldn't be too big of an issue. This is a good thing to hear for Ochako, not really worrying about the strain that Izuku will put on himself. So when the 5 minutes are up, the scouting would then begin as they climb up the building, like a little spider. The Spider-Man and Ochako Uraka, or Gravity, would begin to scale the building, looking for the proper window. When they come across the window, Tenya is right there. Tenya Ida has cleared out the entirety of the room to nullify Ochako's quirk, but unluckily enough, it won't necessarily matter. Izuku sticks his hand to the glass, and with one small press, it shatters to pieces, and he webs Tenya to a wall as they touch the bomb. As they do this, sirens go off, and it is immediately said on the intercom that the heroes have won. Efficiency and quickness is something that they definitely employed. Bakugo's not too happy, especially because he wanted a fight with the so-called Spider-Man, but he was unfortunately unable to get that. Izuku does tell him that that fight will come, and he promises that, and this does reassure Bakugo a little bit, but Izuku still is more on the front of this is training, and he wants to take it strictly as training and a real-life scenario. He's no prideful person. He doesn't want to go out and fight anybody hand-to-hand just for no reason at all. And this is more hero-like than Bakugo would ever be. So that is, well, that's just Izuku in a character as a whole. Izuku would listen to All Might about certain things they could have done better, but frankly, Izuku's side, they don't really have to do much better at all. Bakugo and Tenya, on the other hand, need to be aware of their surroundings entirely. Tenya, to a certain extent, was, but he didn't realize that it would have been that easy. As villains, they do know the capabilities of the quirks of heroes the vast majority of the time, so realizing and knowing, especially that Izuku has spider-like powers, this would definitely come to some surprise that Tenya wouldn't formulate something based upon that, especially upon someone that can climb up buildings and swing on them as well. Tenya facepalms himself and more or less is disappointed in his own actions because he realizes that that's 100% true. He should have taken action toward that advance, but unfortunately, things happen and they need to be better prepared. Luckily, they're not villains, so they won't be coming up with those type of plans and schemes against heroes. All Might tells them all that if they're hurt at all, being that of Tenya, that he got webbed, they can go and check out Recovery Girl and basically get healed up. Otherwise, watch on as the rest of the students go on in their fights, in which they do just that. The fights go on exactly normal, or the heroes versus villain training goes exactly normal, and everything is wrapped up, especially after watching Shoto Todoroki display an immense amount of power. The fact that his quirk, his ice quirk, or maybe half and half, which Izuku is currently analyzing, is so overwhelmingly strong is definitely something to be reckoned with, especially on the hero side. A villain would have so much struggle dealing with that, and ice power to that degree is insane. The drawbacks, though, are definitely have to weigh on him, and there's no way it wouldn't in the long run. Izuku is fast-minded, and he does make these conclusions relatively quick. Maybe that will help him in the long run and in the future if they ever go head-to-head in some sort of sports festival, but that is not here to be seen just quite yet. The day is then wrapped up, and the next day would be upon them in, well, obviously in the morning. In the morning, they'd walk into class, and Aizawa would begin to speak on what's going on. Before that, though, Izuku would be pulled out of class and would have to speak with the one and only Principal Nezu. Principal Nezu would want to speak with Izuku about this so-called Spider-Man. Nezu says that there is no denying it anymore, we all know, and that frankly his secret identity keeping wasn't the best. In which Izuku does admit that to be true, but they tell him that they can spin this, that it's okay, and that he would be in trouble normally, but what they decided to do was to say that he was a vigilante that was unknown, young, and unknowing of what he was doing in that current station, or in that current state, and he was still doing the right thing and the right thing just outside the law. They say that they'll spin it as if he is taking real training from heroes, which he is, and that he's going to make those next steps to do so. Izuku is happy to hear this and says that he apologized and won't do it again, and Nezu says something that intrigues him. Nezu says that he's far beyond most of these other kids. He doesn't need that much teaching, and that would definitely give wide eyes to Izuku. Izuku would be pretty shocked by the revelation and what he's saying. He's saying that he's that far ahead? Like, is he really? And of course, as we know, he is. Izuku is. And after all this time, and after about almost a year of being the Spider-Man, he would be leaps and bounds above the people that he's currently quote-unquote training with. And Nezu makes it clear that they'll be doing some sort of training, and he has someone in mind. Someone a little bit more old-fashioned, but someone that they actually just found recently. It's definitely an interesting event, but they'll speak on it more sooner rather than later. But be prepared to get pulled. But he's told to be prepared to get pulled out of class in the near future. Izuku's happy to hear this. Whatever they have in plan, he is completely up for it, especially if it will make him a better hero. Izuku would go back to class, and he would be seeing his entire class leave, heading on to the buses. He would run over there, get on the bus with them, and they'd be headed off to the USJ. The USJ would be a rescue facility, something that Izuku knows a good portion about. Certain situations need to be handled with certain care, and if you're not careful, well, a bad situation could turn into far worse, and a good situation in terms of relevancy could turn a lot worse as well. But still, Izuku needs to learn as much as possible, even if he knows a good amount in this field. When they would arrive, they are introduced to the one and only Pro Hero 13. And Ochako Uraka fangirls a little bit, saying that well, Pro Hero 13 is her favorite hero, best of all time, and she thanks her, of course. Pro Hero 13 brings them all in, and they begin to speak about what's going to happen and what they're going to do, but Izuku begins to get a giant pain in his head, and there was a realization. He hasn't had this for a while, he hasn't been out patrolling in a while, and frankly, he hasn't had that many people sneak up on him at all. This is his Spidey sense. His Spidey sense is going off like crazy at the moment, and he immediately says to Aizawa that something's coming right now. Aizawa looks confused, but then he looks toward the middle of the USJ as a giant portal opens and villains walk out. And this right here is no normal villains. These are the League of Villains, Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and something even more menacing is to come. But for starters, Aizawa would jump into action. Aizawa is the teacher, is the pro hero. Eraserhead is going to protect his students, and that's exactly what he does. He would jump into action, beating on villain after villain. Yes, these are a ton of lower grade villains, but there's still something to keep Eraserhead occupied. And this would lead to the separation of all the students in Class 1A. Izuku would get sucked into a portal, even though his spidey senses would tell him to go. He would unfortunately be caught just in the nick of time as he tried to swing away, and unfortunately he'd be put in a scenario within the water. Immediately though, he began to think, should he electrocute the water? No, that's a horrible idea and might hurt him or kill him. Izuku thinks long and hard about this, and he thinks that maybe that's the only choice, because it looks like there is, well, some villains on the way headed straight for him. Just as he's about to do his last ditch effort and expand the electricity through the water, he realizes that the villains stop in front of him but then move right past him. They begin to speak about where he went. Where'd the kid go? What happened to that one kid? Is he gone? We just saw him. They're so confused, but Izuku is as well. How did that happen? Do they not see him? Izuku looks at his own body and sees that it's somewhat camouflaged in the water. No, it's like he's invisible. But this is camouflage. Certain spiders, and well, there's far too many to count in terms of spiders and their abilities, but one of them is camouflage, and that's Izuku, and Izuku just revealed it in a crisis. He begins to swim up, and the villains don't even notice. Yes, they see little ripples of well, basically what looks like someone swimming, but I mean, it's nothing too noticeable. It's just small little waves. They just think it's from them moving around or someone else moving around. Eventually, you'd see a web get slung out, and he drags himself out. Asui and also Mineta are currently on the boat that he went onto. They're shocked to see this and begin to even say that they thought he was a goner. They thought they ate him or something because they couldn't see him either. Izuku says that he's just fine, but now that he's up here, he should be able to fry these villains. But Asui does reveal that this would be an interesting but probably poor idea because they'd probably die. Izuku didn't even think about that, but that is a good point. So they decide instead of trying to fry them, maybe he can somehow web them up and put them all in a cluster, in which she thinks won't work either, but he tells her that his webs don't actually dissolve in water. So it's a little bit different, and the webs should still be sticky within the water as well, and as long as he angles them properly, let's just say they shouldn't, well, drown. Of course, that is a worry, but luckily Izuku is able to web them up and actually hang them from a really high ceiling that is above them. They're able to swing out of there and are able to make it back to mainland as they watch Aizawa handle the small fry villains. They think that everything is fine and dandy, which to an extent it is, but just as they're leaving, Izuku stops because his spidey sense is going off like crazy, going off right over by Aizawa. He looks over to see a giant Nomu coming out of a portal, and it immediately charges at Aizawa. Izuku jumps over in a matter of seconds, gripping webs on the back of the Nomu as he sits on the back of, well, the Nomu. He begins to ride the Nomu as if he was some sort of rhino in a way, and begins to guide the Nomu in directions while it struggles to get him off. Immediately, Shigaraki commands the Nomu to stop and grab the little twerp that's on its back, and the Nomu tries, but Izuku is able to wrap around the webs, around the Nomu in different ways and is able to constrain the Nomu to a certain extent. But the Nomu is able to break free through the webs, even though they're made of some strong material that he came up with in a lab. He begins to evacuate a little bit, getting Aizawa out of harm's way and telling him that there is no going against that thing. That thing is a monster. Izuku says that he can't really tell, but is it even human? Is it even living? Aizawa shakes his head, saying that he thinks that it's just literally what he said, a monster. Izuku says that if he doesn't think it's living, he can stop, well, pulling his punches as much. At least if it can take the hits, he might as well deliver them. Aizawa's confused. Pull your punches? Immediately, Izuku says yes and goes swinging in as he kicks the Nomu directly in the face, sending it flying backwards. Izuku moves his ankles to see if he's alright, and it seems like his body is pretty durable. He thought so, and he thinks he'll be just okay. He begins to fight the Nomu, and of course, there is some struggle and there is strength behind every Nomu punch. Don't get me wrong, this Nomu is probably building level, someone that can smash a building if properly angled and properly taken about. This Nomu was supposed to be able to take on All Might, but Izuku is more agile. Izuku is able to dodge, make a miss, but Izuku also has more technology on his side on top of that, with some insane abilities, allowing him to exploit some of the Nomu's weaknesses in terms of, well, angles and not being able to notice where he is. Izuku is able to pin him down and eventually is slowly but surely wearing him out, stringing him up. But as the Nomu would break free of this webbing one last time, out of nowhere, All Might would come soaring in at insane speeds, landing a giant punch to the Nomu, sending it flying out of the arena, or out of the USJ. Izuku was happy to see this. He didn't really want to deal with the Nomu any further than that, because he wasn't sure exactly a way to not kill it, because technically it's already dead, but actually subdue it entirely. And maybe the way of doing that is actually getting it away from Shigaraki and Kurogiri. Just as he thinks and says this, immediately Shigaraki comes to try and grab Izuku's arm. He's able to dodge via his spidey sense, luckily, and Kurogiri and Shigaraki are forced to leave as soon as possible. There was a hope there that they could get a tag on Izuku, maybe hurt him in some way and restrict him, because whoever this future hero is and who they obviously have heard about the Spider-Man, if he's really the Spider-Man, this may be an issue. This is not someone they calculated for. They may have calculated for someone that was All Might's successor, but not for someone that has arguably the strength of All Might's, but on top of that has far more techniques and technology on his side. A threat is an understatement for the League of Villains. With that said, the USJ was a bit of a flop, but at the same time made many of them realize relatively quickly what was ahead of them. These students had to learn how to fight against real villains, against real power. Now they understand that, now they know, and now they will take things far more serious than they've ever before. The next step up will be the UA Sports Festival. The UA Sports Festival is going to be a time for all of them to learn, for them to fight, and show off to everybody what they can do, and maybe even get into an agency that they enjoy and that will benefit them. But for Izuku, the call from Nezu would eventually arrive right before the UA Sports Festival would begin. That call would be for something very interesting. Nezu explains that there's no real reason for him to actually be involved in the UA Sports Festival. On top of that, they want to, well, stay away from large public events. They want him to train with somebody for a little bit and then actually have him patrol with somebody in Japan for a while. Just maybe for a little bit of a learning experience and getting this so-called person back in the limelight. Izuku's confused. Back in the limelight? Well, who are they talking about? There's someone from America. Someone that was actually in a crashed plane near Japan. And this crashed plane, well, it seemed to have someone still living aboard. It seemed as if an iceberg grew around this person, floated a little bit too far away from their original destination, and something odd happened. They're not sure if this was all a ploy, a setup, or maybe constructed by Americans themselves, but they'll take whatever opportunity they can to get someone back on their feet. And Izuku questions who this is, and he begins to say that America is a little bit different in terms of their heroes, and was different a long time ago. Nezu remarks that this hero was definitely something different than everybody else because he didn't have a quirk. He was an experiment. This man goes by, well, the name of Steve Rogers, codename Captain America. Izuku shocked. Captain America, he died a long time ago. He's heard about him in history books of the U.S. history books and many other things. Captain America? They're serious? And Nezu is dead serious. He believes that Izuku would be a good person to actually speak with him and work with him. The fact is, there was a version of Spider-Man in America before. Not exactly what Izuku is. Izuku's more of that boisterous, loudmouth, and, well, more young version of that Spider-Man. But maybe it'll be a friendly face for Captain America. And Captain America may even be able to teach Izuku some things. Maybe give him an opportunity and opportunities that he never knew existed. And this is where we're going to leave off on part 2 of What If Deku Was Spider Man. How will this affect the story? How will Captain America showing up in Japan in a different type of world affect the near future for Izuku? And what's different in America? And will Izuku be interested in exactly that difference? Well, you'll have to find out in the next part of What If Deku Was Spider Man. And if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, make sure to leave a sub, and make sure to leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And of course, shout out to my boy, Crown Fiend, for the thumbnail. And yeah, that's about it. I hope all of y'all have an amazing day. Later.